Bakassi, Akwa of Northeast. I rise with utmost sense of responsibility to move the attention of this Senate to the illegal annexations of Nigerian Mangrove Islands situated at the Fiat Inbo local government area of Akwa State by the Republic of Cameroon. This is noting that the islands in focus were not part of the territory ceded to the government of Cameroon by the 1913 Anglo-German treaties and the International Court of Justice decision of October 2002. As such, the encroachment into these territories is not only legal, but has led to huge economic loss of over 2,560 oil wells and gas revenues, which ought to accrue to Nigeria. Also, very pathetically, it is a monumental national embarrassment that foreign laws are imposed by the Cameroon gendarmes on Nigerians living in the 16 Nigerian ancestral homes and villages and the St. Mangrove Islands. Hence, I am compelled to move this motion in the following terms. That the Senate observe that the Mangrove Islands and waters situated at the geographical location called a Fiat Inbo local government area of Akwa State, marking the terminal end of the Gulf of Guinea down seaward to the Atlantic Ocean coast, is currently under the administrative control of the Republic of Cameroon illegally and contrary to the 1913 Anglo-German treaties, International Court of Justice judgment of October 2002, and Section 12, Sub 1, Sub 2, Sub 3 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. Aware that the islands and waters are economically important to this region, as it holds copious fishing routes and approximately over 2,560 oil wells, as well as gas revenues that should accrue to the Nigerian government, but which are lost to the Republic of Cameroon as a result of illegal annexation of these islands by the Republic of Cameroon. The Senate is further concerned that Nigerians living in the said Mangrove Islands, comprising about 16 villages and ancestral homes in an area recognized and provided for the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, and which was not ceded to Cameroon Republic by the 1913 treaties and the International Court of Justice judgment. Be uncomfortable with the Cameroon soldiers in their communities, even when no Cameroonian lives in that community, took to an open protest. See Punch newspaper of Saturday, March 19, 2016, page 19. Further aware that 2 months after the protest of March 2016, Cameroon President Mr. Paul Biya, during his visit to Nigeria on the 5th of May 2016, inquired from the former President Muhammadu Buhari about Nigeria's position on Bakassi Peninsula and the Nigerian-Cameroon hydrocarbon joint ventures, and was informed by Mr. President Buhari that Nigeria had accepted the International Court of Justice judgment, but that the technical aspect of international waters, which is the embodiment of the said Nigerian Mangrove Islands and waters, is yet to be fully determined. See Vanguard of newspaper of 5th of May 2016, page 8, and Leadership newspaper of 5th May 2016, page 6. Further worried that the continued expansionist foreign policy of the Republic of Cameroon after independence of our country by legal annexation and vigorous pursuit for the 16 villages of Nigerian Mangrove Islands, waters and oil constitute a breach of international laws, an affront of Nigeria's territorial integrity, and unlawful exploitation of Nigeria's economic resources, as well as a national embarrassment. The Senate recalls that Resolution 16, Sub 1 of the first ordinary session of the Assemblies of Heads of States and Government of the Organization of African Unity held in Cairo from 17th to 21st of July 1962 All African nations, including the Republic of Cameroon, pledged to respect the borders of other African states after attainment of national independence. Cognizant that the Anglo-German treaties of 11 March 1913 laid the Mangrove Islands firmly within the Nigerian territory as they lay west of Rio del Rey River and serves as the official borderline between Nigeria and the Republic of Cameroon, as reaffirmed by International Court of Justice judgment on the 10th day of October 2002. Senate further observed that although the International Court of Justice had ordered both Nigeria and Cameroon to withdraw sovereignty over areas that were not entitled to under the 1913 Anglo-German treaties, which resulted in Nigeria hurriedly ceding over 32 villages from Adamawa to Lake Chad areas to the Republic of Cameroon. Cameroon Republic has continued to hold up Nigerian territories to ransom, thus adversely affecting the people and the economy of the entire nation. Therefore, Mr. President, my distinguished colleague, the Senate resolved to set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the illegal annexation of Nigerian Mangrove Highlands at the Fiando by the Republic of Cameroon and report with necessary recommendations as shall be directed by the Senate. I hereby move this motion for consideration and adoption by the Nigerian Senate. Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
I represent Edo South Territorial District. Mr. President, as I stand to second this motion with all sense of responsibility, may I also be allowed to make some comments? For me, and as for this Senate, I presume, it's bad enough that Nigeria ceded such amount of territory to Cameroon, something that we all still regret. That with that, Cameroon is still intruding into our territory. It's something that I consider very annoying. And there are certain flashpoints in our country, and I think this is one of those flashpoints that Nigerian government should pay serious attention to. I don't know why by now that given this issue between Nigeria and Cameroon in these border areas, in this mangrove area where we have a lot of resources, why we haven't actually considered having an army post stationed in such places to protect not just our assets, but to protect Nigerians who have every right to live peacefully in their ancestral homes and villages. So, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I thank the mover of this motion, and so respectfully I second this motion and ask that we all should rally around this motion so that at least we can send a strong message to our neighbor Cameroon that enough is enough of this incessant intrusion into our territories. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Siraki Dixon.
Of the Senate and my distinguished colleagues, first I would like to begin my remarks by commending the mover of this motion for bringing this very serious development to the attention of this Senate and through the Senate to the entire nation. I would also like to commend you, Mr. President, and the Senate for properly exercising the judgment in determining that this matter is serious and is urgent enough to be discussed here and now as we are doing. Having said so, Mr. President, we all in this chamber and in this country are aware of the sad developments arising from the judgment of the International Court of Justice some years back and the Green Tree Agreement made pursuant thereto, and the steps to the chagrin of most in this country, and particularly those of us in that area. Nigeria took steps to give effect and withdrew sovereignty leaving a lot of communities, indigenous communities of Nigerians, residing in local government areas recognized under the constitution of this country. They were left stranded in Akwa Ibom State and in Cross River State. Mr. President, you were not part of the delegation last week of the leadership of the Niger Delta to the president. But I know you must have been briefed. And let me inform us that in that interaction with the president, amongst other things, the plight of our communities and indigenous people in Akwa Ibom and Cross River, suffering in that area, was brought again to the attention of the president to call on the Nigerian authorities to come to their rescue. And I think what is happening this morning is an extension of that concern. I know that a number of colleagues here rightly will be asking, these communities and areas that this motion is drawing attention to, were they part of the ICJ judgment and the subsequent Green Tree Agreement? I think those are issues that call for closer examination of the facts and calls to question the need why the Senate must direct an inquiry so that we can determine, firstly, in the course of that inquiry, whether these communities and these people were affected by that ICJ judgment and the Green Tree Agreement and the subsequent withdrawal of sovereignty by the federal government of Nigeria. But let me say also that even if communities were affected, for those who were affected by the ICJ judgment and the agreements that were entered into, the agreement itself and the judgment, if you read closely, imposes duties and obligations on the government of Cameroon and also on the Nigerian government. The people are here to see these benefits or support from either the government of Nigeria or the government of Cameroon. As a matter of fact, a number of them, rightly speaking, can be considered, unfortunately, stateless. Whereas the security officials and people from Cameroon treat them anyhow, the government of Nigeria too has also abandoned them. And come to think of it, in their own ancestral lands. These are people who are indigenous to those areas, who were there before the formation of Nigeria in 1914, the amalgamation, and they were there before even Cameroon came into existence. But as a result of interplay of international forces beyond their control, they are left abandoned. No one considers them as citizens. No one owes legal responsibilities to them. And it cannot be so. And it is to that extent, Mr. President and my dear colleagues, that I fully associate myself with the motion and the prayers and request that an inquiry be set up so that we can interfere, we can talk to our Nigerian authorities, visit the areas, and then see for ourselves whether these were part of the ICJ and the Green Tree Agreement. And if they were not, then it means that they are part and parcel of Nigeria, internationally speaking, according to international law. And if they are, then the Nigerian government has to stand up for them, the Nigerian government has to fight for them. These are areas that some years back, the former head of the state of this country, General Abacha, may God bless his soul, knew what to do, showed commitment to the territorial integrity of our nation, and deployed troops to protect. Nations fight for land, nations fight for resources, and the Nigerian government must stand up and defend the people and the land and the territory that is in question. Even if we make a determination that they were covered by the ICJ agreement, ICJ judgment, and the Green Tree Agreement pursuant to it, there are still obligations. The Nigerian government must still show itself as a responsible state power to protect the interests of the communities and the people in Akwa Ibom and in Cross River State, to take up those issues with international bodies and specifically with the government of Cameroon, and ensure that they are given all the succor and support that they are entitled to under municipal law and also under international law and treaties. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The
representative of his people, because a representative needs to always move in to find a solution when the interest of his people is being touched, when the territorial integrity of his country is being compromised. Thank you for bringing forward this very, very important motion. Mr. President, without much ado, Senator Dixon has said it all. He has said it all. What we need to do is to move into action. The relevant agencies of government and the Ministry of Justice should move into action to find out the truth about this matter. We cannot wait for a minute to deal with this matter. We're talking about our territorial integrity. People are being, not maltreated in their own land. Foreign countries coming in, overcrossing its boundary, coming to our own nation to maltreat our people. This cannot be accepted. So I want to call on Ministry of Justice, Boundary Commission, and all other agencies involved to please move into action so that we can find out the truth about this matter. We're in an era of technology. We can find out these boundaries without much hassle so that we can deal with this matter as soon as possible. We can't wait for a minute. These people need to be protected. They are Nigerians, as stated in this motion. All I want to do is that all I'm asking for is support of this August Senate so that we can pass this motion and calling on the relevant bodies, relevant agencies, Ministry of Justice to move in to make sure that this matter is dealt with decisively. I so submit, Mr. President.
Fully, and what I can find out that is of greater substance in the motion is that there is a judgment already on this disputed area where the Cameroonians have annexed illegally. From the Anglo-German Treaty of 1913, which was referred to in this motion, and the International Court of Justice judgment delivered in 2002, it is not ambiguous that the Mangrove Islands is part of Nigeria. Therefore, I believe that what we should be doing is how to enforce the judgment of the International Court of Justice. The people living there in the Mangrove Islands are Nigerians, not Cameroonians. So there is no way our people should leave it like that, particularly as Nigeria has complied with the Anglo-German Treaty of 1913 in ceding 32 villages between Adamawa and Lake Chad. So why are we ignoring this oil-rich part of Nigeria that the Anglo-German Treaty ceded to Nigeria and backed by the judgment of the International Court of Justice? So we should move to enforce that judgment. There are ways of enforcing judgments. We cannot be beneficiaries of a judgment and leave it, and the other people will continue to exploit our resources in the region. So I believe, like the DSP said, the Attorney General and Minister for Justice should seek a way of enforcing this judgment delivered by the International Court of Justice in favor of Nigeria as it affects Mangrove Islands in Akwa Ibom State. So this is my contribution. Let us act fast and not allow that to continue. 2002 to today is 23 years. Yet we have not taken steps to take back our land that the International Court of Justice
has delivered its judgment firmly that Mangrove Islands is part of Nigeria. So the negligence is on our part. We have not seen anybody who will be beneficiary of a judgment and allow it to lie like that. And these things will continue. So this is my contribution, Mr. President. Let us act fast and recover our territory. With 2,560 oil wells in this region, it's not a small asset. It's an important part of Nigeria that we shall do everything, both diplomatically and legally, to recover and keep Cameroon out of it completely. I so submit. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
In 2014, I brought a motion pursuant to the International Court of Justice decision of October 2002, and which was co-sponsored by the then Senate leader, Barrister Ndoma flatly calling on Nigeria to reject the International Court's decision, because going through the report of the decision, one could clearly see that it was decision taken in flagrant disregard for the interests of this country. And one of the reasons why we read that motion at that material time was because the Nigerian representation was sluggish, wasn't very strong, and because the Cameroonians had gotten, even though they did not ask, by the Court of Justice decision, October 22, you could see clearly two things. One, the Nigerian sovereignty is not as important as it should by succeeding governments. The sovereignty of a nation is something that is guarded with everything necessary. And therefore, 23 years after the judgment, we continue to see part of Akwa Ibom and to some extent part of Bakassi, as it doesn't matter. The Bakassi peninsula and part of Cross Rivers, the Bakassi peninsula has been, the indigenous have been running helter-skelter so many times to the National Assembly with regard to villages being taken over by Cameroonian authority. But as I stand today, nobody has done anything to even attempt to show this peninsula and its indigenes that they are Nigerians. This is not about Akwa Ibom or Cross River or Ibeelsa or Niger Delta. It's about Nigeria. It's about our own people, that we have not gone this far to protect the interests of our people. Does not, for me, surprise me, because we have not treated our people with all dignity that they deserve. Imagine 2,250 hours. 560. This is a combined wealth of Ghana, of Niger, and Equatorial Guinea put together. And because we are really interesting people, it behoves some imagination that you could clearly lose such a number of wealth, and with the ravaging poverty in our country and insecurity, yet we're not paying attention to it. Disregard even the issue of the material being. What about the human beings that are there? What about them? What's their future? What's the future of their children? They have suffered so much for 23 years. They have never believed they have a government that can protect them. Mr. President, this is not a small matter. I believe this motion is just not enough for a public discussion. The leadership of the Senate, led by you, Mr. President, should take this matter to the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces, President Bola Tinubu. Get him briefed, let him get the experts, the diplomat, let him also look at the International Court of Justice judgment of 2002. We know why that judgment was given against Nigeria. We were trying to tell the world that we are a good boy, that we are a good country, and therefore, without exchange of fire, we just give up our inherited homelands. And there are no tangible reasons why we did what we did. And when we were invited in the leadership in 2014 by the then President Goodluck Jonathan at the villa, I was there. The entire leadership of the National Assembly was called. The leaders from Nigeria were called. The experts who represented Nigeria were called. And President Jonathan asked them to lay their provisions. And believe me, they could not do the needful. Those experts somehow were told not to protect the interests of the and sovereignty of this country. And it was alarming. Jonathan's hands as a president then, because of the diplomatic bottlenecks, his hands were tight. He knew the truth. We all know the truth. But at that mature time, we adjourned the meeting sine die, and we were told that the government will do something about the peninsula, Bakassi Peninsula. 23 years after, at least 19 years after that particular meeting in 2014, we are where we are, and these people keep annexing. We are not too big. We are not as big as Mali. We are not as big as Mauritania in terms of land mass. But see how they jealously guard their territories. But because we think we are a divided people, you need to come from Akwa Ibom to feel the pains. And that is false narratives. It's a false narrative. Whatever happens to a person in Akwa Ibom, in Cross River, affects all parts of this country. And that is the wrong side of history that we have not been able to imbibe and enforce to our citizens. And see whatever happens in the nick and cranny of the country affects us. I'm from Ningi, far away from Akwa Ibom, but I feel the pains, because what if it happens to me? Imagine I wake up one day and go to Ningi, my village, and I'm told that it's been annexed by gendarmes. How do you feel? What do I tell my children? What do they tell their own children? What is the future? So, Mr. President, I believe this is an important step, a very important step to reclaim our lost sovereignty. So far, the entire African subcontinent think we are just a lame duck country. The leadership we are purportedly said we are leaders is just a mere dialogue. It's a mere giant of Africa. That Africa is the cornerstone of our foreign policy shall further be revisited, because the cornerstone of Nigerian foreign policy is Africa. That means whatever is Africa is our priority. And that is an area we need to revisit. Yes, we are the leaders. Yes, we are more populous, but we have not been given our dues by some little African countries who should have ordinarily behaved that we are there for them in their good days, in their bad days. So, Mr. President, I believe this is a timeless motion, and it should not just be any other motion. This motion should be taken with all seriousness. And before the end of the week, we will want the leadership of this Senate, we want to call the leadership of the Senate and get a report of their meeting with the President and Commander-in-Chief on this matter. It is important by next week we'll get a report from you, Mr. Senate President, that you have met with the President and there are things put in motion in alleviating this crisis. Otherwise, thank you.
Yes, distinguished Senator Jimoh Ibrahim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senate President. My distinguished colleagues, my name is Jimoh Ibrahim Folosho. On our sovereignty, there's a complaint before Your Excellency that the sovereignty of Nigeria is challenged by Cameroon. And as a matter of fact, we need to report this to the United Nations, because the convention under which the law of sea is, which we signed, is under the United Nations Convention. The material fact here, Mr. President, is about the law of the sea and the nautical mile of engagement, which is 1,804 kilometers. And when you violate this, a lot of issues even beyond oil comes up. Pollution, environmental disaster, right to fishing, and all embedded in this. And the State Senate cannot keep quiet when there is a complaint about the invasion of the sovereignty of Nigeria. And that's why the other time I cited the Peace of Westphalia of 1648, which embodies the sovereignty of every country. And I come to invite Your Excellency to this very important motion before us, that one, the sovereignty of our country is in complaint. Two, there is a violation of the right of sea, particularly the nautical mile of engagement. And this is very fundamental because we need to look at this. So it's on this note I invite Your Excellency, Senate President, and very, very distinguished colleagues who have made fantastic, brilliant submission of this motion to a serious engagement. Things like ad hoc committee, immediate response from the Senate to the executive, advising the executive on what to do very critically, particularly in the protection of our sovereignty. I don't want to take much of your time. I align myself with those submissions that are brilliantly made on the floor of this Senate today. But again, for the first time, Mr. President, under your presidency at the 10th Senate, there was a report today, very historical, that there was a violation of nautical miles and the sovereignty of Nigeria. This can bring environmental disaster, it can affect revenue, it can cause economic problem, it can cause security damage if we are not the ministry. So there is need to get Cameroon reported to the United Nations as a violation of the United Nations Convention. They are the ones violating it, not Nigeria. So that when ICJ meet again, judgment is to be given under advisory notes, not even submission of counsel. Then the report of the Senate will be very critical and be accepted as one of the reference points that ICJ can rule upon. We must report this to the United Nations Convention, in which we are signatory. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jaigbe. I represent the good people of Cross River North Senatorial District. I rise to lend my voice to this all-important motion because it even affects my own state. We all remember the Bakassi Peninsula ICJ judgment, which came up sometime in 2002, which affected my state. Up till now, the Cameroon gendarmes are still molesting our people and defiling our women. It calls for so much attention. I align myself with the submissions of Senator Jimoh Ibrahim on the United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea, UNCLOS. It specifically stated that the EEZ is of 200 nautical miles. And I don't see why the Cameroonians will not limit themselves to that. Apart from that, there is also the Anglo-German Treaty, which is supposed to be domesticated by each of the countries. That has not been done. There are also international laws governing the sovereignty of states and their territorial waters and their biodiversity. But the Cameroon has decided to flout that. We must take necessary actions. And we call on the government to take up legal and diplomatic steps to address this issue. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. Mr. Jaigbe. I represent the good people of Cross River North Senatorial District. I rise to lend my voice to this all-important motion because it even affects my own state. We all remember the Bakassi Peninsula ICJ judgment, which came up sometime in 2002, which affected my state. Up till now,
The Cameroon gendarmes are still molesting our people and defiling our women. It calls for so much attention. I align myself with the submissions of Senator Jimoh Ibrahim on the United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea, UNCLOS. It specifically stated that the EEZ is of 200 nautical miles, and I don't see why the Cameroonians will not limit themselves to that. Apart from that, there is also the Anglo-German Treaty, which is supposed to be domesticated by each of the countries. That has not been done. There are also international laws governing the sovereignty of states and their territorial waters and their biodiversity. But the Cameroon has decided to flout that. We must take necessary actions. And we call on the government to take up legal and diplomatic steps to address this issue. Thank you, Mr. Senate President.
And I speak for the people of Bakassi. Distinguished colleagues, the unjust ICJ judgment 23 years ago has caused untold and unimaginable hardship to the people of Cross River State, specifically the people of Bakassi. That judgment had certain conditions, such as the appropriate resettlement and reintegration of the people of Bakassi. Till today, that has not been effected. Beyond that, there were issues that arose from the city of Bakassi, such as the loss of oil wells from Cross River State. These are issues that have led to untold hardship once again. We have internally displaced persons in Cross River State, not just in Cross River South, in Cross River Central and parts of Cross River North. Distinguished colleagues, prior to the 23rd day of September 1987, Cross River State and Akwa Ibom State were one state. This infers that issues affecting the border of the territory of Akwa Ibom State also indeed affect Cross River State. I would like to propose that during the discussion on the prayers that have been proposed by my friend and colleague Senator Bakassi, that we expand the scope of this motion, which deals with just the Mangrove Islands, to disputed territories within the Cross River Akwa Ibom region and Cameroon. Thank you very much, sir.
OGD. Amotumba Benga Daniel, representing Ogun East. I also want to lend my voice to the submissions of Senator Bakassi and all the people who have also spoken in favor of this motion. But I also want the Senate to take note that the challenge that we have in the mangrove area environment also exists in Ogun State. As you are probably aware, Ogun State is probably the latest oil producing state in our country on account of the massive oil reserve that have been found in the Ijebu waterside, also known as Ogun Waterside local government. But however, in Tongeji Island, within Ipokia local government, is also massive oil deposits, which unfortunately we are not protecting. As we speak, the Republic of Benin are claiming parts of Tongeji Island. And I think the situation in Bakassi, in the mangrove area, is also the same within Tongeji Island in the Kwa local government in Ogun State. I therefore want to say that the Senate should kindly add this particular area to the areas where we will call the attention of the federal government of Nigeria to do the needful. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, the issues before us are historical. We know about the judgment of 2002. The problem wasn't the judgment itself. There have been judgments between Palestinians and the Israelis that they were never respected. There were judgments between India and Pakistan in Kashmir that were never respected. The issue was that our government then, at that time, under President Obasanjo, hurriedly agreed to hand over Nigerian territory to Cameroon. For whatever reason, that was wrong. But I am not going to dwell in the past. May I now seek a way forward? Mr. President, the first one, we know that the English-speaking part of Cameroon, the so-called Ambazonians, have been clamoring for their independence. And all they are asking is for Nigeria to recognize them. And in return, they are prepared to give back the Nigerian territory that was given to Cameroon. So we need to look at how we can negotiate and create some problems for Cameroon by negotiating with those who are asking for independence from the Ambazonian people of Cameroon. By the way, they are the English-speaking part of Cameroon. Secondly, Mr. President, we need to review the ICJ judgment as implemented. It is never too late to review those judgments. And, Mr. President, I am aware that we do have some military that are capable of protecting Nigeria's integrity. What is happening, Mr. President? Why our Navy, our military, why are they not there protecting our Nigerians who are being molested and harassed? Why are they not up and doing? I know, as I said, that this is a historical matter. I know that in the past people have said, oh, Cameroon is being backed by France. Mr. President, I am also aware that our current president, President Tinubu, is a friend of the French government. This matter should be taken up at that level, and we should be looking at how we can review the entire territorial disputes once and for all. It has come to the point where we cannot no longer just leave it to senators from Akwa Ibom or Cross River State or Ondo or whatever. We are talking about Nigeria's integrity, Nigeria's territorial integrity. So it's either we seek the military intervention alongside the same time talking with the French. Mr. President, we are not going to achieve anything leaving this matter to Ministry of Justice or Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We've gone beyond them. If the judgment of 2002 was not implemented, I'm sure Nigeria's military would have still remained where they were occupying at that time. Mr. President, I do support the motion entirely. Thank you.
Allowing me to also lend my voice to this very important motion. Mr. President, dear colleagues, I want to state that Adamawa State is also affected.
Please, give me the
4 local governments of my senatorial district Mubi North, Mubi South, Michika and Madagali are affected by the same episode. And so it is my candid request, Mr. President, that when the prayers are being considered, Adamawa State, especially Adamawa North Senatorial District, should be included on the matter. Having said that, Mr. President, I also want to call our attention to the operations of the Nigeria Boundaries Commission. That commission, Mr. President, has become toothless and ineffective. They are supposed to monitor all our boundaries. They are not supposed to just concentrate on our internal boundaries, but they should also work on our international boundaries. But Mr. President, this commission is ill-equipped, they are underfunded, and they don't have the wherewithal to adequately monitor our boundaries and report same to the appropriate quarters. With this, I want us to also pay attention to that boundary commission so that they can be funded, they can be equipped and empowered, because they are the civil organization that are supposed to monitor those boundaries and also call the attention of the federal government of Nigeria to encroachments and other things that our neighbors are doing. With this, Mr. President, I thank you and I make my submissions accordingly. I thank you.
Distinguished Senator Ethan Williams.
President, I thank the mover of this motion, and I will a little deviate from all the submission, but I align myself with them to say the right time for Nigeria to act is now. We have a president who has done and taken so many things from the blind side. The tax law, oil subsidy, and now I am also calling on our own president, who I respect enough, who has done so many things to take us also by reclaiming our territories. Cameroon is doing what they are doing because of economic reasons. They are doing it in Boki, as I speak to you, most of our territories for economic reasons. Most of our land, they've taken and nothing has been done. And now, from the motion, you go through it, you discover it is because of the oil wells in that area. They are not doing anything outside the oil wells. If you go to Ecom as I speak, you see so many people who have run away from that territory to Cross River because the gendarmes are molesting all of them. So, Mr. President, I would say, let the Senate, the committee, meet with Mr. President to take another bold step, as usual, for us to reclaim our territories back. No single territory of Nigeria should be taken away from us for any reason, for any judgment, when there was no plebiscite. Nothing was done, and we cannot continue like this. It is when such an action is done, you will discover that these actions will stop. If not, maybe one day, all our local government in Akwa Ibom and Cross River will be taken away by Cameroon, and nothing will happen. So, Mr. President, I call on our President to act fast, and that time to act is now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, I thank Bakassi for bringing this all-important bill. And from the time given by the Senate, it shows the feeling of Nigerians towards this purported annexation of our territories and mangrove forests by another sovereign nation. Nigeria is a sovereign nation, and the illegal encroachments violate all the extant judgments of the International Court of Justice and all the treaties ever entered between Nigeria and Cameroon since 1913 till date. So it would be wrong for us not to take very decisive actions. There was something that Senator Ningi submitted, that even the leadership of the Senate could also take this up directly with the executive outside the investigation that we're about to carry out. So they will on their own also use national security apparatus to look into the issues because of the security implications to Nigeria. And part of that security implication could be that part of that territory could be used to dump toxic waste from outside the country, from outside Africa, and all this nuclear toxic waste. They will make money from it, but Nigerians will suffer the effect. So this is why we have to protect ourselves. And I'm aware that even when the ICJ decision was taken, there were third-party interests that were raised by Sao Tome and Principe and the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. And that was part of why they had what they call point X, outside which they cannot calculate their maritime territory from there. Otherwise, it would have wiped out the external boundary of Equatorial Guinea, Sao Tome and Principe, and Nigeria up to Pobo, resulting in most of those areas not becoming littoral states any longer, becoming landlocked and not having access to the sea because the sea will now belong to Cameroon. So what has happened so far is a clear violation of the rulings of the International Court of Justice and even the treaties that were entered into between Nigeria and Cameroon. So I think this is worth investigating. Our colleagues may wish to go further to even discuss with the Cameroonian counterparts on the implications of what they are doing, because we want to live in peace with our neighbors. And so as we go into the prayers, I think part of the additional prayer could be that we should engage the President, Commander-in-Chief, Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to also ginger him to take necessary steps at that level to see how this situation can be brought to an end. So I thank all of you for all your contributions, and I want to move straight into the prayers. Prayer 1, set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the illegal annexation of Nigerian Mangrove Islands at the Fiat Imbo, Akwa Ibom State by the Republic of Cameroon, and report with necessary recommendations as shall be directed by the Senate of the Republic of Nigeria. Yeah? Yes, amendment. Senator